Hello and welcome, everyone. I see we've got a few people logging in now. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Oh, we do have some 8. Good.
Yeah, hi everyone, welcome.
Hi.
Hello, welcome.
Thank you guys for joining us. We'll get started here in a few more minutes once everyone has a chance to join in. Welcome, welcome.
It's so pretty this time of year when everything starts blooming and it's not raining. It's pretty when it's raining too, but it's so green.
Yeah, I love that almost like neon.
I know.
In the woods.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome, folks. Thanks for joining us. We'll get started here in just a little bit. I'm not sure if it's outside Janine's window or Rena's, but I hear somebody's little Tweety birds going out the window.
Could be mine.
Love it.
I think, I was going to say it's not my window.
It might be mine,
The Tweety birds like the front of my house, but they don't really come around to the back as much. We have nice little trees in the front for them to.
Aw.
Yeah, the deer like our backyard a lot. We have 3 deer that come, sometimes 4.
Aw.
The boy deer. I think he spooked himself though a while back. He saw his reflection in this window, the window of this office, because it was dark, and I was watching him from the other windows, and he saw himself and he was stomping, stomping his foot, looking into the reflection and stomping his foot like he was challenging himself. He didn't know what to think.
Pheasants will do that. They will really go after their reflection.
I was kind of worried because he has and I was like, what if he kind of goes after the window? That'd be a fun one to explain, but no, he didn't. He just kind of was unsettled.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, who's this guy?
Mm-hmm.
What's he doing?
Yeah.
I know we got a few more folks joining us, so we'll get started here in just one more minute, but thank you guys for tuning in and joining us.
Oh, good. We have quite a few now.
Yeah. Welcome, everyone. Fantastic. Well, I'm gonna get us started because it's a little bit after 6:30. Thank you everyone for being here tonight. My name is Katie and I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator for the Heritage Trust. And I'd just like to welcome you so much for coming to tonight's edition of our speaker series, The Stories We Tell About Nature, The Stories Nature Tells About Us. We're welcome tonight with Rena Priest, who's going to share some of her wonderful poetry. But first, I'd like to share a welcome from the Washington Humanities. And we would like to begin by acknowledging that we present this program from the traditional lands of the Lhaq'temish people, and we ask those in attendance that wherever you may be to reflect on the traditional lands that you inhabit and to pay respect to the original stewards of those lands and to recognize their continuing connection to them. The presentation you are about to enjoy is part of Humanities Washington's Speakers Bureau program. Humanities Washington is a nonprofit organization dedicated to opening minds and bridging divides by creating spaces to explore different perspectives. Thanks to support from the National Endowment for the Humanities, the Washington Secretary of State, the Thomas F. Foley Institute for Public Policy, and the Public Service at Washington State University, and generous private donors, Humanity Washington Speakers Bureau presenters visit all corners of the state. I would like to encourage you to visit their website, www.humanities.org, to find other events like this one. And a note on civil discourse. The Speakers Bureau program is designed to generate an open and honest conversation on many topics, some of which may be controversial. We encourage offering differing points of view, and we ask that you treat this topic, the speaker, and each other with respect. I would like now to turn it over to Janine Shaw, one of our lovely board members, to introduce Rena.
Thanks, Katie. So Rena Priest is a poet and an enrolled member of the Lhaq'temish Lummi Nation. She has been appointed to serve as the Washington State Poet Laureate for the term of April 20th, 2021 to 23. She is the 2022 Maxine Cushing Gray Distinguished Writing Fellow, a Vadon Foundation Fellow, and recipient of an Allied Arts Foundation Professional Poets Award. Her debut collection, Patriarchy Blues, received an American Book Award, and her most recent collection, Sublime Subliminal, was published as the finalist for the Floating Bridge Press Chapbook Award. She is a National Geographic Explorer 2018 to 2020 and a Jack Straw Writer 2019. Priest holds an MFA from Sarah Lawrence College. And thank you so much for joining us, Rena.
Now, CEM, O'Helixon, Quinasatla, Tiakaias, Sahwaltanats, and a snatch of Hulamison. Just thank you for the introduction, and I'm just really pleased to be able to join you this evening and to share some poetry on the topic of stories about nature. And I'll just go ahead and get right in. First, I'd like to thank the Humanities Washington and the Washington State Arts Commission for their support of the Poet Laureate program and all that they do to bring arts and literature to Washington State citizens. This is called Welcome to Indian Country, and it's a bit of a land acknowledgement that sort of asks us to think about the Western Hemisphere and how it's all Indian country. So, welcome to Indian Country. Where is Indian Country? It's everywhere we stand. It's anywhere we dance. It's where the earth loves the feel of our feet. Welcome to Indian Country. What does that mean? It means this is where we lift our voice in song and make a joyful drumbeat for our hearts to sing along. Welcome to Indian Country, this beloved country here, where we honor our ancestors by growing stronger every year, by making laughter the answer that wipes away our tears. Welcome to Indian Country. What does the future hold? In uncertain times like these, we reach for words like hope and things we can be sure of, sunrises, beauty, and love. Welcome to Indian Country. It's everywhere we dance, where the feast is truly grand. Welcome to Indian Country. Now give us back our land. So this next poem is called To Sing and Dance, and it has an epigraph by my great-grandmother, Sadie Celestine Jones. She says, "When I was a little girl, they wouldn't allow any Indian dancing." And this is true. I wrote this poem to talk a little bit about how the way that the instructions that we were given on how to care for nature and the world, the other animals and creatures, everything we share this world with, that was all carried in our ceremonies and our songs and our dances. And so the prohibition of our songs and dances and spiritual practices caused some of that to be lost, maybe not entirely, but it was no longer, it was not permitted to be practiced. until August 11th, 1978, when President Carter signed into law the American Indian Religious Freedoms Act. So this is a poem that speaks to that a little bit. To sing and dance. The spirit says, sing and dance for me, and I will take care of you for all of your days. This must be the reason why for Indians to dance and sing was made a crime. We had to take it underground. On my res, singing and dancing were allowed, but only once a year on Treaty Day, when agents from the BIA were obliged to look the other way so that we Indians could celebrate that treaty where the ancestors traded so much away in exchange for our lives. Otherwise, raids were made on ceremonial homes, sacred objects seized, obliterated, or appropriated for use as museum displays, meant to serve as proof that our nature-loving Indian ways were dead. How foolish was the BIA to think we wouldn't sing, to think we wouldn't dance in celebration of this beautiful world. For the spirit says, sing and dance for me, and I will take care of you for all of your days. Voices lifted in songs of praise, foot soles whose every touch of the earth is the step of a joyful dance. These are the spirits that make wicked men afraid. So I read that poem with an invitation to audiences to think about what would the world be like if we collectively, everywhere, still held sacred the beauty of the natural world and held sacred the rights of the fish and the rights of the water and the rights of all of the other animals, the way that our songs and ceremonies and dances instructed. I think that we would live in a much different world. I think we would live in the world that my ancestors lived in. And before I read this next poem, I'll tell a story that informs it. And it talks about the islands of the Salish Sea as a garden. It tells the story of Quilshan and Kwame, who are Mount Baker and Mount Rainier. I don't think Mr. Baker ever saw his mountain, but in our language, that's Quilshan, and Mount Rainier is Kwame. And at one time, a long time ago, they were together, and something happened, and she decided that she was going to move on and they were going to part ways, and she wanted to move south. And there was a big dramatic exit. And on her way out, she created the islands of the Salish Sea. And she left a gift on each of these islands. And the story, there's a story that accompanies each of the islands and how the gift came to be there. On Vendovi, she left, which is in our language is Panahuan, she left the camas, and the instructions to the people are that we would burn that every year so that the camas prairie would come back strong. On Lummi Island, she left the deer, which is Smamiak. That's the name of your island, the island, Lummi Island, our island. It's for the deer, Smayas, Smamiak, and so on and so forth, all throughout the Salish Sea. And then when she got to where she wanted to settle down south, which she thought was far enough away, she settled in there. But on a beautiful day like today, where it's clear and sunny, you can sometimes see all the way down to Mount Rainier. And sometimes Quilshan will look and he'll admire how beautiful she is standing down there, so tall and regal. And she'll look and she'll see him looking at her, and she'll say, no. And then she'll draw the clouds around her again. And that's why it's raining here all the time. But to speak to the stories, the ancestors, they tended the islands like a garden. Lummi is actually, we're not really mainlanders, we're island people, we're straight Salish. We speak a unique dialect called Lummi Chasen, and it's not Lhaq'temish and it's not Lhaq'temish, and it comes from the islands. But as I was saying about Vendovi and the other islands, the practices it was to tend them like a garden. And this poem is called Sui tu Iashutanachwin, which means the truly beautiful earth. This used to be a garden before the strangers came with strange beliefs. They claimed to be cursed with something they called original sin, but blessed with something else called dominion over the whole living earth. They tore apart the garden, insisted that the savage wilds be conquered and subdued in order to be improved. We are part of the earth, thus their belief that we too must be subdued. Have they forgotten this used to be a garden? On the seventh day, did they look upon their work and see that it is good? I think we need our old beliefs to guide us back to the garden beyond the gate, guarded by their angel with a fiery sword. This used to be a garden. I don't think the strangers knew how the garden grew, so carefully attuned to the rhythms and tones of the earth's own beautiful song, sung for untold millennia before they came along. This used to be a garden. It fed us, and we loved it. We still do, or at least the memory of it. I have heard it said that half histories are half truths, and half truths are lies. Let me tell it to you whole. This used to be a garden. So that poem, I think, is sort of my rallying cry to teach the true history of this region. We spend a long time talking about the explorers of the world and not so much about the original peoples in school. I've had teachers thank me for sharing some of this, talking about how the time immemorial curriculum, they're only given like a week to share about all of this Indigenous history. And I remember one time I was contracted to write curriculum for a private school for the time immemorial. And I won't say which, of course, but I was given 1,000 words in which to write about, let's see, sovereignty, the Dawes Act, the Stevens Treaties, let's see, the Seahawks logo, the preferred terminology for Indigenous peoples. There were a bunch more, but I had 1,000 words in which to write all of this. And I thought, this is actually erasure. And so I didn't continue with the curriculum after that because they wanted it in own voices, so I kind of felt like I was co-signing something that I felt was somewhat wrong. So I stopped. But anyway, so this poem is called The Forest for the Trees. I have seen a tree split in two from the weight of its opposing branches. It can survive, though its heart is exposed. I have seen a country do this too. I have heard an elder say that we must be like the willow, bend not to break. I have made peace this way. My neighbors clear-cut their trees, leaving mine defenseless. The arborist says they'll fall in the first strong wind. Together we stand. I see this now. I have seen a tree grown around, a bicycle, a street sign, and a chainsaw, absorbing them like ingredients in a great melting pot. When we speak, whether or not we agree, the trees will turn the breath of our words from carbon dioxide back into air. Give us new breath for new words, new chances to listen, new chances to be heard. So that poem, it's funny, I was given the task, this was the first poem I wrote as Poet Laureate, and I was given the task to write about dialogue and civic discourse in democracy. And the brain goes immediately to trees because, we don't have democracy without trees. We don't really have people or anything without trees, do we? So it's not really, it's a bipartisan issue, right? So anyway, let's see here. This poem is called A Poem is a Naming Ceremony. Let's see, I think there's something in the chat here. Oh, can't hear anything. Someone can't hear anything. All right, well, am I talking loud enough? Okay, cool. A poem is a naming ceremony. What has grown out of what has gone away? The clear-cut patch has grown larger on the mountain. The rivers have grown murky with timber trash, and there's enough runoff cow manure to grow corn out there on the tide flats. I don't want to think about what has gone away. I want to meander and play and forget myself until I can grow a new me in place of all this grief. Learn the language to see the cottonwood as quailage each, the dancing tree. The killer whales as Quilhomichin, our relatives under the sea. The whole glorious landscape filled with meaning to end my grieving. When I was young, I was invited to learn Quilnuchkin, the people's language. But I said no, I didn't understand. I thought I wanted to learn how to be rich. I didn't understand how to be rich. I didn't know that the only way to possess all the wealth of the world is by naming it. Here is bird song. Here is the kiss of a lover. Here is the feel of cold water at the peak of summer. I have spent my life with words trying to name a hint of what I lost by not learning my language. Estitemsen, tutatesen, estitemsen. So those last three words are, I'm doing my best, I'm still learning, I'm doing my best. And as I've learned, as I've started this journey towards learning my language, there have been a lot of really beautiful discoveries about how the ancestors saw the world. Among them, some of my favorites are that, you know, the quailage each, the cottonwood, it's a dancing tree. It's a tree that dances. That's just such a different way to understand a tree than, you know, cottonwood, which is our commodities. You chop them down, you burn them, you build things with them. But to think of them as, to think of the trees as their own beings that have expression and joy and that they dance is a different way to see them. Same with the Quilhomichin, our relatives under the waves, the killer whales. They're not killer whales, they're our relatives, they're people. The old people understood that they had, you know, a culture of their own and matriarchies and things like that. So let's see here. You can kind of tell, I wrote this, one of the images is the cold water at the peak of summer. I think we're in for a hot one this year. I think that the weather is going to change and we'll have some more of these, you know, 100-degree summers that we didn't really have as much when I was a child. But yeah, the language definitely celebrates nature in a way that I think English is not as innate in English. And this poem is called Resonance, with an epigraph by Anaxagoras, who says, all things were together, the mind came and arranged them. The flicker of a wave on the sea is a flame, not like a candle on a cake, keeping tally of our days. Instead, the fire measures life together by the sweetness of resonance. How, exalted by the dawn, we as one have sung our true song, become a single voice across the waves. The wax of a candle begins inside the humming darkness of a hive, but before that it begins as sunlight, calling forth blossoms, pollen, and bees who play matchmaker to trees, calling forth fruit to become new seeds. Where does love begin? It is a surprise, but obvious and easy, like breathing. It has been here all along, a flicker on the sea that swam up from the deep to touch air and light, shine like fire, to leap from its element the way a tree becomes a boat so the earth can leap into the sea and sail toward adventure. Things are changed, things transform, This is the way the mind arranged it. The mind comes and arranges, the heart draws it all back toward union, washes away the illusion of separateness, gives new measures for happiness. A new way to celebrate the state of being of one heart and one mind. Uithuchning. Our song is a ferry that joins two shores. So that poem, it has the phrase Uithuchning, which translates literally to good feelings, but it was described to me as being the state when your heart and your mind are in resonance and there's no conflict between what you feel and what you think, and that when you're in resonance with others around you, that there's no conflict between the hearts and minds of the others, and so great things from there can be accomplished, is what they say. The elders say you should be in that state, good feelings when making decisions and being together with your people. The other thing, there's an image in there that talks about the way that the earth leaps into the sea and sail towards adventure, the way a tree becomes a boat. And is the belief that when a tree was used for a canoe, it didn't stop living. It continued its life the way a caterpillar becomes a butterfly and continues in a new form, that the tree continued its life, to be a house post with the people or to be a canoe with the people. And so, the people had relationships to these things as these beings, as living beings, canoes and our houses. And so it added an extra tragedy when, they were confiscated or when they were burned by game wardens and officials who were trying to prohibit the practice of traditional life ways of our Shalangan. So just to share a little bit about that. I know people name their cars, but I think it might be a little different. Okay, let's see here. Talk a little bit. Boy, the time just flies, doesn't it? Okay, this poem is called Songs on the Salmon Scale, and it has a partner poem. These are in the new collection, or in a new book that is published today, actually, on Sasquatch Books, and it's available at Village Books and online and elsewhere, just kind of all over the place, really. The book is called Northwest Know-How Beaches, and I visited 30 different beaches. Excuse me. I visited more than 30 beaches over the course of between January and March of 2021, just right before I was appointed as Poet Laureate. And after I was done writing about the beaches, they said, "We have room. Will you write some poems and some retellings of these legends?" And I said, "Oh, sure." So I included a few poems, and I decided to go with the pantoum format for all of the poems in the collection. If you don't know, a pantoum has repeating lines that cascade throughout the poem, and they start and end on the same line. And it kind of felt like, every beach I went to has that expression, the cascading waves that roll in, and, it's repeating. And so I thought that the form echoed the feeling quite nicely, which is kind of what you're going for in poetry. So this poem is called Silence from the Deep. How do we mistake desolation for peace? When orcas no longer sing, will we grieve? Waves say hush along the beach. Under the waves, there is no reprieve. When orcas no longer sing, will we grieve? Each generation dwindles in number. Under the waves, there is no reprieve from human noise, pollution, hunger. Each generation dwindles in number. The world is a mirror of our hearts. Look away from human noise, pollution, hunger. Everything is endangered or going extinct. The world is a mirror of our hearts. Look away so as not to see how under the waves everything is endangered or going extinct. When orcas no longer sing, will we see? Will we see how under the waves that say hush along the beach, when orcas no longer sing, will we see how we mistook desolation for peace? And that just kind of speaks to some of the challenges that the orca populations face in the contemporary world, where they're competing with boats and fishers and pollution and everything else to survive, really. But this poem is slightly more celebratory. It's called Songs on the Salmon Scale. A salmon is a song sung in rounds, a series of concentric circles like a raindrop in the sea, rippling out and returning. A series of concentric circles, a chorus and a verse, rippling out and returning in a body of shining treasure. A chorus and a verse, a hero home from adventure, in a shining body of treasure, bearing gifts from the deep. A hero home from adventure, like a raindrop on the sea, bearing gifts from the deep. A salmon is a song sung in rounds. So I'm collecting an anthology of poems about salmon. If there are any poets in the audience, I'd love to read your poems about salmon. I hope to have it published before the end of my term as Poet Laureate, and I want to be able to launch it next year during National Poetry Month. And so that maybe it'll get some good play and we can celebrate salmon together with poetry next year in April. Let's see here. This poem is called Tour of a Salmonberry. A salmonberry is a luminous spiral, a golden basket woven of sunshine, water, and birdsong. I'm told that the birds sing so sweet because of all the berries they eat, and that is how you can have a sweet voice too. In my native language, the word for salmonberry is alila. In Sanskrit, lila means God plays. Salmonberries sometimes look that way. Every year they debut spectacular in the landscape, worthy of their genus name, Rubus spectabilis, meaning red sight worth seeing. Each druplet holds a seed in the shimmering secret kept by rain of how to rise, float above the earth, feel the sun, and return. So one thing about poetry, I use it to keep things every year. During salmonberry season, my mom tells the story about her grandpa Casimir, who always told her, if you eat lots of berries, you'll sing real sweet. If you watch the birds, they eat lots of berries. And so, you know, things become truth after you hear them a million times. And so I like to keep that story. I like to think about it every time. It's almost salmonberry season right now, so that story will be coming back around any day. And I've always loved how the salmon, nature loves a circle, right? Nature loves echoes. Salmonberries actually do have, they look like salmon, you know, the red ones for the sockeye and the gold ones for the kings and so on and so forth. But let's see here if I can find this poem. Another thing, that poem, Songs on the Salmon Scale, I titled that poem the way that I did because on a salmon scale, you can see there are circuli. There's at the center, there's a focus, and then there are circuli that ripple out from the center. And by counting the rings, the circuli on a salmon scale, you can supposedly, you can tell how old it is, which I thought was really cool. Anyway, this is called Round Dance. I've heard that a triangle is the strongest shape. Okay, perhaps, but a circle will always circle back. For its reliable tenacity, nature loves a circle. A circle is relentless. We've been going in circles on this rock for eons, a fractal making songs, a as generations spin along, spinning out new variations with each turn in the cycle, new tyrants, new saviors, new hungers, new flavors, new yet patently familiar. A drum is a circle, a community is a circle, a yurt, a turret, an igloo, a powwow, a pantoum, a hero's journey, the moon. An iris, a pupil, a nipple, a breast, one circle, a ripple into the next. An ovum, a cell, splitting like an atom, exploding, growing, arms, legs, joys, griefs, ascending and circling back, back, all the way back to the tomb, dust and ash, you'll be back. Energy cannot be destroyed, only transformed. Is it a comfort or a horror? It's both, it's everything, and it would be overwhelming. But here we are again, where we retract to void, relax. Let the song hold you wrapped. Nature loves the circle. So one thing about my poems is that there is a lot of science in them. And I think it's like hidden and it's weird. It's a weird hidden science. These poems, by the way, are all from my newest collection that's unpublished, and it's called Dancing to the Ticking of the Doomsday Clock, which sounds bleak. It kind of sounds a little bleak, but as was mentioned before, in my culture, we dance in order to heal things that nothing else can heal. We sing and dance. And so here we are in this dire situation on this planet, and I think it's time to really celebrate and sing and dance and in praise of nature. But anyway, so one thing, like I was saying, though, that's a little tangent. There's a lot of science, and it's hidden. It's not really obvious, but sometimes I'll explain it at readings, or sometimes people will just know. This poem talks a little bit about the double slit experiment, which scientists have done this experiment somehow where they shoot light through like a screen, and there are two slits in the screen, and they have like a little thing, like a monitor that records it. And this sounds crazy, but you could look it up. Someone's saying yes. Okay, good. All right. So they shoot light through the screen. It goes through these two slits and it lands against the wall. And they measure the light distribution of the light particles against this wall to try to understand how it's moving through the slits. And when the little monitor is toggled to on, the light will behave as waves, and when it's toggled to off, it will behave as particles. So anyway, that's just an interesting fact. And they said that they don't know why, and apparently they say that there's a Nobel Prize in it if someone can do the math to explain it. And what I think it means is that light is conscious, right? And I think that is would have been the understanding of the old people as well. This poem is called A Study of Light, and it was written for the summer solstice 2 years ago. The longest day is a study of light. When light behaves as discrete particles, it makes waves, but only when observed, or so I've heard. In my ancestral language, I recently learned the word for river is the same as the word for Milky Way. The light today is torrential, unrelenting. It pours and I am caught in it. I can't stop it, so I lift my head and let it soak me, while the luminous day goes on and on and on. So to think about light, the ancestors thought about light and water as though they were one. So the word is stalo, the Milky Way, and a river. They're both stalo. And it kind of feels that way, right? You're here and it's sunny, you're drenched in light. And if you're here and it's rainy, you're drenched in rain. You're going to get drenched either way. Okay. And this poem is called Before Clocks. Before clocks, to keep time meant music, the steady rhythm of a beat, the playful plucking of a string, the full throb of a drum sounding to the steps of feet. To keep time meant stillness, the steady passing of a day, no need for rush or delay in the fluid timeline of one's own way. To keep time meant tides, the waxing and waning of the moon, the easy pace of later and soon, the warmth of the sun declaring high noon. To keep time meant seasons, the rippling rings of a tree, the changing disposition of the sea, the migration of harvests leading us to where we need to be. And it always happened right on schedule. Okay, 2 more, and then I'll open it up. Well, 3 more. No, 2 more, and then I'll open it up to discussion. Poem is called Beach Fire. And this also is in the Beaches book. Measure wealth by how well you enjoy the hours, fluttering by in praise of sunshine and the ocean breeze, whispering love songs across waves that kiss the beach. This wealth takes work and absolutely no work at all. Fluttering by in praise of sunshine and the ocean breeze. Don't mistake leisure for laziness. This gratitude is rigorous. This wealth takes work and absolutely no work at all. This gift of a moment to be alive, to feel at peace. Don't mistake leisure for laziness. This gratitude is rigorous, to be filled up and satisfied by the day at the beach. This gift of a moment to be alive, to feel at peace. It means your heart fire flames a lovely heat, to be filled up and satisfied by a day at the beach. You could toast marshmallows by that warmth. It means your heart fire flames a lovely heat. The glowing embers, a boundless source of power. You could toast marshmallows by that warmth, whispering love songs across waves that kiss the beach. The glowing embers, a boundless source of power. Measure wealth by how well you enjoy the hours. Poetry makes us rich. One thing, again, back to the salmon berries, it's my favorite kind of berry. I love looking at them because it is as though they glow, right? If you look at a salmon berry, or cut citrus does this too, it glistens and it shines like it's like it has this inner light that radiates, if you look at it in the sunlight, and it's just really, really beautiful. It's like bling. I have a real soft spot for like shiny things. And so, salmon berries have my number. But also, the thing about being a poet, this is fun too, is that having an interest in words, I think, enriches one's experience of the world. So like to learn that each of those little tiny bubbles on a berry, there's a name for that. It's a druplet. It's kind of cool. Okay, and it's miraculous. And this poem is called Miraculous. The math has been done. The fact of your existence is 700 trillion to 1, more or less. You've played the cosmic slot machine and won, struck the freaking jackpot, my friend. So are you a miracle? Yes, I'd say so. But I'd also say that remembering to put out my recycling on Wednesday is a miracle of equal magnitude. Or is it Tuesday? We must not be narrow in our definition of a miracle if we are to lead miraculous lives. The body believes in miracles. When you get goosebumps, it's the feeling of your body trying to grow hair really, really fast so that you don't get cold. Your body loves you, will attempt a miracle to make you comfortable. If you can happen and I can happen and we're all just mostly songs and bent light, then it stands to reason that hunger and war and all that painful history and your heartaches and more can all be eased by merciful, miraculous softness. Yeah? So we'll stop there for now. And then if in discussion we get a hankering to read another poem, we'll do that. But I'd love to open it up to to have a conversation with you all. So if there are questions or comments, just feel free to type them into the panel. Or, if Janine or Katie would like to comment or talk about anything or hear about anything, I'm happy to answer questions and respond.
Thank you so much, Rena. That was amazing to hear that and to get to listen to some of your poetry and hear some of the story that goes with it and the background. I just loved it. And I just want to start off with a quick question of when did you first know that you're like, yes, I want to be a poet? Like, poetry is my jam. That's my thing.
I think that, well, I always really loved the sound of language and words and stories. My grandma used to have this competition where she would give, like family gatherings, she'd say, I have $5 for whoever can talk the longest. And I could talk when I was little. I was one of those kids that would talk, and that $5 was mine. But, she also would ask me to tell her, because I would ask her to tell me stories, the legends, the traditional stories. And she'd say, well, you tell me a story. How did the island get there? Right. And so I'd tell her just off the cuff, like this big, fantastic story about how the island came to be or whatever. And, it's pretty wondrous, really, when you think about like creation of reality and stories and how they really do that. It's really fascinating that people have that ability. I was reading this book by Yuval Noah Harari called Sapiens. So good. But he talks about how it's actually our ability as storytellers that binds people together more than anything else, that like creates a society that we really only truly have enough like bandwidth in our only enough brain power to remember so many faces or character traits of individuals like in a society. And so we couldn't have built great societies without uniting around a common story. And so I thought that was pretty powerful to think about how, the common story that we're united around as people in like the Western Hemisphere, and it's in Europe and everything, it's the Jesus story, right? But there were a whole lot of stories here before that, and the story, the Bible story, the Genesis story, the creation story talks about, going forth and subdue the earth, and all that, and it sort of, it gave the directive to not like, well, okay, so this is a lot off track from like how I became a poet, but it is, it talks, I think, about like what informs my poetry. The idea that everything has a soul, right? That is something that exists in all Indigenous creation stories. We come up out of the dirt and we are introduced to all of the other beings around, and, or like the bone game story about how we played bone games against the animals to see who would be the hunter and who the hunted. And they took pity on us because we were just these, poor little hairless creatures, and how would we survive? And so they sacrificed one of the animals, gave us a song in the end that made it so that we could be the hunters. And in honor of that sacrifice, there are a lot of rules about reciprocity and how to treat game and animals and things like that. So anyways, there's just all of these different ways of seeing the world. And I think that's my fascination with poetry and storytelling and language. In college, I learned that the word poet comes from the Greek. There's a word poesis, which is to make, and that you're making the world essentially through poetry. I think that's beautiful and amazing. And in times like these, I think we need to remake the world, and it's going to fall to the poets and the storytellers. If we can tell a good enough story and enchant everybody with this story about how beautiful the earth is, then, we probably have a chance. Thanks for your question.
I'm going to follow that up, Rena. Thank you for that. This question is related. It says, I loved all the poems, but particularly the salmon as a circle. Could you talk more about how you came to that one, and hopefully read some more of your poems?
Yeah, so that I learned a lot about salmon that I didn't know before. I mean, I grew up in a fishing family, and of course at Lummi, our belief is that the salmon are sacred, and I'd known the salmon woman story and things like that, but I didn't know some of the details about how important they are as a keystone species, right? Like everything relies on the salmon, and they make this, and that journey that they make, not just out to sea, but like when they come home, I learned that they bring with them marine derived nutrients. So all of the minerals out in the ocean come in the bodies of the salmon up at the rivers, and they feed everything in their natal stream. And so, the bugs, the trees, the root systems of, just like everything is fed by the return of the salmon. And so, relying on the completion of that journey. So of course, the Lhaq'temish, our relatives under the waves out in the ocean, they rely on the salmon, the southern resident orcas, but they're everything relies on them coming home and spawning. And I just think that whole journey, that beautiful cycle, is pretty amazing. And I learned while on canoe journey one time about why they put the wreaths on the canoes, the Cedar Bow Wreaths. And this is something, there are a lot of things about our Chelangan, our Lummi culture that are practical, but they're beautiful. Like they're beautiful in their function. An elder was talking about why we did that, and salmon guide by smell. So they can smell their natals, or they can smell the stream that they came from. Like way out in the ocean, they pick up that scent and then they swim towards it. And so in the old way, people harvested cedar boughs to make wreaths for the canoes of their visitors, so that they would put them on there. And then when they were back out at sea, salmon would smell those cedar boughs that were collected from along the streams, salmon bearing streams, and they'd swim towards these cedar boughs. And so I thought, oh my gosh, that's genius. So that there might be a chance of having fish while you were out in the middle of nowhere on your way home from a gathering. You could catch a fish. They'd be attracted to your canoe by the scent of their natal stream. So that's amazing. The salmon, they're just pretty amazing little critters. I have a poem. It's a little controversial, and it's about salmon. Actually, I have a lot of poems that are about salmon that might be a little bit controversial, but here, since you're asking about another poem, we'll see. Maybe we'll see how this goes. It's called The Miracle of the Fishes. I don't want to get into a thing. Okay, so I was at Gonzaga and Todd Marshall, who works at Gonzaga, he was the poet laureate two poets ago. And he was my host. And I said, Todd, I don't know if I should read this. And he said, oh, just go ahead and do it. And they loved it, just so you know. Like I was raised Catholic, and apparently everyone, they love blasphemy as much as I do. So, all right, The Miracle of the Fishes. I don't want to get into a thing where we're arguing about whose spiritual hero is better, but salmon are more powerful than Jesus. All salmon are born from virgins. Actually, they're born right out of the earth. Female salmon lay eggs in a riverbed. The males come and fertilize them. No male-female contact is made. How chaste. Young salmon make their journey to the sea, then return to perform the miracle of the fishes. They spawn and die in their nutrient-rich bodies and blood, infused with the minerals of the living sea, feed all living beings in the salmon's natal stream. A salmon needs only itself and its journey to perform this miraculous feat. The beautiful and holy communion between salmon and all living things has been happening longer than people have been on this planet. On the other hand, basic transubstantiation requires a priest, a church, an altar, a tabernacle, an altar boy, a glass of wine, a tray of wafers, a bell, a Bible, dogma, an initiated congregation, the Spanish Inquisition, a history of burning witches, a history of stealing and starving Indian kids, a history of holy wars, a history of displacing and murdering heathen Indians in the name of God in order to propagate a story about a boy born from a virgin whose body and blood we eat and drink so we shall be saved. Saved from what? Not from hunger or thirst, but from everlasting damnation in the burning pits of hell, which, if I close my eyes to visualize, looks suspiciously like hunger and thirst on this broken and burning earth. So, took an unexpected turn, didn't it? But I think that one of the things in poetry that they tell you is that if you put like a hard image against a soft image, it empowers both images, right? And so that was the reasoning there. But yeah, anyway.
That was great. Rena, could you tell us a little bit about serving as the Poet Laureate for this last year?
Sure. It's been amazing. I have gotten to do and just gotten to meet a lot of really amazing people and go to a lot of really great places. It's just really been a wonderful experience, and I've grown tremendously from it, I think. When I first started, I had a bit of the imposter syndrome. And I thought, what am I doing? I'm out of my depth. It was really kind of scary in a lot of situations. And, you just charge forth and you think, okay, just do your best and it'll be okay. And so there were a lot of situations where I felt I was really kind of having to rise to the occasion, and it was scary, but it was wonderful to come through the other side of I think after the first year, I thought, oh, wow, well, look at all of that I did, and it turned out okay. And of course, poetry audiences are wonderful in general. So I was never truly in danger as I felt. But yeah, so it's just been really good. I think it's been huge. It's been wonderful.
You're getting a lot of wonderful comments, which I agree with. And I don't know if you can see them, but it says your poetry is fearless, and thank you for sharing. And there's some ex-Catholics out there. But I wanted to ask you, can you, given the pressing needs of the environment, and I think I agree that art is probably the thing that might save us, but can we afford to take time for leisure, not poetry, but for leisure, given the state of the planet?
I think it's necessary. I think that leisure is very healing. I think that it's a form of self-care where if you, especially for climate activists, any kind of activists, I've done some activism, and I returned to the art for its nourishing aspects, the way that I feel like it sustains me. But in activism, you kind of you can become problem focused, because you're trying to get the word out, right? You're like, hey, look at this problem, because a lot of it is, education, like trying to get people aware to activate around against, or, to activate in response to a problem. And that's very tiring. And leisure, truly appreciating being alive on this planet, I think it makes you love it. If you can get out and connect with the natural world, which is really hard. I mean, like, we're so blessed here in Whatcom County. I think about this all the time. When I was in school in New York, I once drove for 3 hours to try to get to a body of water that I could swim in. And I got there, and it was like, there was like a little section this big corked off, and there were like hundreds of people in it. And it was like half the Bronx had just decided that they also needed to be in a body of water that they could swim in. And I thought, there's a lot of beautiful things about New York, but you can't really, you have to go a long way before you can really connect in a meaningful way with nature that isn't a park, that isn't Central Park. But here we have that option, and to spend our free time, or to enjoy leisure in these beautiful places, I think really will make a person want to fight for them and preserve them. And so I think it's necessary. Yeah, for sure.
So we have another question from the chat. This one came from Judith. A question about form. In addition to the pantoum, are there other forms you think about or that your poems have suggested? And does this happen while in the process, or do you sometimes choose the structure in advance? Do you sometimes sing some of your poems with melody?
I think that music is really important in poetry. For me, some people go just kind of like free verse. But I really like to play in form a lot. I've invented forms. I've worked and invented forms. Like my collection, Sublime Subliminal, those poems are all written in an invented form by an Arizona poet named Jim Zimmerman. And it's called 20 Little Poetry Projects. And so they all include like the name of a famous person, the name of a famous place, and a slang phrase, and a local idiom that I've heard, or a piece of language that is interesting to me, an image from each of the 5 senses. So there's 20 of these little things to incorporate in each of the poems. And that form lends itself really well to like a celebration of tangible things and a celebration of language. They all are just really kind of interesting. It's an interesting form to work in. If you end up looking at Sublime Subliminal, you'll see. But yeah, form is really fun. I feel like it frees you in a way, because if you sit with limitless possibilities, you can get stuck. Whereas if you have to work within, a little confined space, you can move from one thing to the next, and then before you know it, you have a poem. So I love form for that. And like over the winter, I was tasked with the assignment to write a poem about snow. And snowflakes have 6 sides, and sestinas have 6 stanzas with 6 lines. And so I thought, okay, well, this is going to be a snowflake sestina. And so, I kind of went with that. And the poem ended up being about how snowflakes form in clouds, and how long it takes for them to fall to the earth. But yeah, or like the villanelle. I wrote a villanelle. That is like it's a form that was like invented in the countryside. And if you think about the term villain, it comes from like country dwellers, just residents, regular people are villains. If you think about the language, and villa being like a home, right? And so that poem ended up being about how lucky we are to have shelter from the snow. And so how like people who are unhoused are kind of villainized in a way. So, the idea of the villanelle talking about that. So form mirroring function, I guess. It's the sweet spot in poetry.
Here's a question. Do you mind more questions?
Nope, not at all.
It says, do you have any advice for new writers?
Yes. Just keep writing. Your writing will feel to you like it's not working for a really long time, and then all of a sudden something will work, and that's really nice. Don't judge yourself. I always think about Ira Glass. He had this great quote. Actually, I went to a talk. He came to Western once, and I went to his talk, and the things that he said in that talk were really helpful for me as a writer. But the theme is really that your taste is better than your skill for a long time. And so don't be critical of yourself, because your skill will actually catch up to your taste, but not for a really long time. Because you have good taste, that's the thing that's going to make you like good as an artist or a craftsperson or a writer. So don't doubt your taste, but also don't judge your skill based on it.
That's awesome advice.
Isn't it? Ira Glass is a genius.
You're so
That's
smart.
not my advice. That's Ira Glass's advice for new writers. But it's been tremendously helpful for me.
Yeah. I have one more question I'm kind of curious about, Rena. So, a lot of your writing and your poetry, it obviously is very influenced by nature and the world around you. Where do you end up doing most of your writing? Are you like, do you have like an office workspace? Do you write outside? Do you scribble notes? Are you a typer? Like, I'm just kind of curious what that looks like.
I like to, I write notes in a notebook kind of really regularly. I wouldn't say constantly. There are times when I can't get a good notebook. That it's weird. There's like a bonding process that happens, and I don't really know how like to make that happen every time. I think you have to like the notebook. But I write in notebooks regularly, and then later I can go back and make a poem out of those. And then sometimes though, I like to, something will get stuck in my mind, and I'll just kind of like, it'll be back there in the subconscious all the time as I live my daily life. And then when it comes time to write it, it'll be like the middle of the night, and it'll be quiet, and it'll be nice because nobody else will be around, and I'll just sit down and I'll write it. And I think that's the ideal situation, is like the middle of the night. Let's see, is poetry part of the Lummi elder storytelling? I think so. I asked what the word for poem was, because people asked, what's the word for poem in your language? And so I asked my teachers, and they said, no, you can call it a stilum, which is a song, or a tiwi, which is a prayer. So it's a song or it's a prayer. And I really loved that answer. The people, they may not have been composing poems, but they had songs and prayers, and they were doing that all the time. So I think that the worldview is so poetic, like when I was talking about language. And the stories too are very poetic. They're like poems almost. They're so beautiful. Some of them in how they pass the lesson. It's weird because sometimes you'll read the story and you'll be like, what? Like in oral history collections and stuff. And and then it'll just kind of stick with you and haunt you. And then like years later, you'll be like, oh, okay. So I think that they have this subtle way of working in the subconscious. I think the same way that poetry does. Yeah.
So do you have time for one more question?
Sure. Yeah.
So this is thinking of your Ira Glass story. How far have you moved from the themes of your first poems?
Yeah, the first poems, like when I think about the poems that I was writing in undergrad, I'm really happy that my partner at the time, he borrowed my computer so that he could make, well, he did this without talking to me about it. He put a game on it and he needed space and he deleted the hard drive, like everything that was there to put this game, computer game on it. And he saved it to a CD-ROM. This is like how I'm dating myself right now, right? Like how old I am. He saved it to a CD-ROM. He thought he saved it and he gave it to me and I was like, it wouldn't fit on that. What is this? And he was like, no, it's there. And it was the icon. It was the icon of the folder where I had saved my writing, but it was none of the writing somehow. So all of that is gone. And I feel like, and that has happened again kind of recently. I lost 6 months worth of work. But I feel like, and it has happened like periodically, not at that level, but like where it was all of it that I did in undergrad. But in a way, I feel grateful that it's gone because, you can move on and write new things. And I'd probably be horrified at some of that work I was doing then. I still have the application to Sarah Lawrence that I made when I applied to graduate school. And I thought, my God, why? What were they thinking? I'm really happy that they let me in and I got to go do that. So, I think it's my ability to craft a poem has come a long way from when I first started writing. Thematically, it's almost like I work in projects. My first book, Patriarchy Blues, was in response to living in New York, where you can't walk 10 feet without seeing a half-naked woman with a snarl on her face, like, the sexy face or whatever. And it just is very like, it's a very masculine city. Also like thinking about all of anyway, that was the first collection. The second collection was based around wanting to bring some celebration back into my language and using that invented form to do that. And then this collection, of course, is really focused on celebrating the beauty of the natural world and kind of looking at some of the systemic, the things that are in place that we have to kind of work against, that we have to shift in order to be able to successfully address it, I think. And looking at my traditional culture as a possible answer, to some of the bigger challenges that we have, like with worldview and things like that. So, I think it just shifts with whatever you happen to be looking at a particular time, thematically anyways. It's a great question. Thanks.
It is. Well, Rena, thank you for your very beautiful and very powerful poetry. And thank you for spending time with us and honoring us in this way. We can't thank you enough.
Thank you, Haishka. Thank you so much, everybody who stuck with us. I appreciate the opportunity to come and share poems with you and share time with you in this way. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Please come back.
And thank you everyone for attending tonight. We have one more speaker in our speaker series. Dr. Joe Gatos will be joining us on Tuesday, June 7th to discuss the marine ecosystem of the Salish Sea. So I hope you all can join us again for that. And thank you again, Rena, for this presentation. This was wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you. And thank you, Humanities Washington, for allowing us to have this wonderful speaker. Good night.